Let's go now to Kirsten Evans, Executive Director of In Defense of Christians. So, Kirsten, what are folks doing in defense of Christians? Yesterday, during a Catholic Mass, we had a priest beheaded in front of a couple of nuns while they filmed it and then gave a speech in Arabic. And, of course, today I look, and they've got balloons, and they've got candles, and they've got some heartfelt notes in front of the church. It turns out that the radical mosque down the street was actually on land donated by that church to the Muslims as a sign of trying to work together, interfaith harmony. Tell me, how do you defend Christians against barbarity like this?
Good morning, and thank you for having us on. It's a very good question. First of all, our hearts go out to Father Jacques Hamel and to the community there in France. Is a really horrific.
Okay, Kirsten, what does that mean? Your hearts go out to him? I understand that everybody's sad. Everybody's got the sad face on. You know, it's terrible. That's not in defense. Tell me what in defense means. You just had a priest beheaded in a Norman church that gave the land to the mosque, and the guy was under house arrest, but a magistrate determined against what the prosecutor said to let him out during the day. He filmed it. He gave a sermon in Arabic. When you say in defense, what is in defense? I understand, heartfelt. We all feel heart. It was a terrible thing, but what is in defense of Christians and other organizations going to do about this?
Well, what we need to understand is that Christians are being targeted in this conflict with radical Islam because of their identification with the West, right? We're seeing this over and over again. We had the 21 Coptic Christians on the shores of the Mediterranean who were beheaded. We've seen similar types of incidents with Boko Haram. This goes back to 2010 with the attacks against Christian churches in Baghdad and in other parts of the Middle East, on and on again. And ISIS has made very clear and public statements that their intention is the eradication of Christianity. We will break your crosses. We will enslave your women. That was one of the reasons why we were able to get the genocide designation approved and recognized in the United States, was not just because of the actions of ISIS, but because they're publicly saying our intention is the eradication of Christianity. All of that is because of the identification of Christianity with the Western world. They're not attacking Christians because of their beliefs in the Blessed Trinity or because of differences in theology, or they attack Christianity because by doing so they attack at the softest part, the heart of a culture. And it is a clear way of saying it is not just, we don't just set off bombs in Brussels, the heart of the European Parliament. We're attacking your very culture,
this was said a number of
which
times
we identify with the demise of Islam in our own nations and in our own region.
This was said a number of times yesterday. That's the softest part. Why is Christianity the softest part of? Why is it the softest target? When did this happen? Last time I checked history, Vienna, Charles Martel, Spain in 1492. In times when Christianity was on the rise and on the move, it wasn't the softest. In fact, I would posit it was the hardest. Well, how did it become the softest?
I think by saying the softest, what I mean to say is that Christianity is. It's not a political institution in the Western world today. It's not a military institution. So this is all visceral reaction to political and military engagement of the West in a region of the Middle East for years, for decades, for centuries. Right? But Christianity doesn't represent in modern times any of those institutions. So what it does represent very clearly is the divide of culture. It represents the distinction of culture. And that's what's meant by the softest part. The second part of that is that Christianity in the Middle East, if you look at Iraq, if you look at Syria, if you look at the Christian populations throughout the Middle East, those are generally populations that have brought enormous social goods to the region. They run schools, they run hospitals, they run institutions of civil good and societal good. And so you have populations that have generally been within the Middle East, populations that have brought social stability, political stability, moderation, tolerance, and by targeting those populations, you're targeting an element of the population that has actually sought to be a peace-bearing part of their own population, and you retaliate against it with violence. And that, I think that's what's meant by the soft stop. It's one thing to set off a bomb in Brussels. That's a political statement. It's another thing to say we're going to go after Rome. It's another thing to target nuns and priests and homes of the aged in Yemen. That's not those aren't political institutions. Those are social and cultural institutions that are striving to do good.
Kirsten, how can people get more information about your group? You're the executive director of In Defense of Christians. How can people get more information about your group so they can pitch in to help?
They can find information about us on our website. We're at www.indefenseofchristians.org. We have a big event coming up in Washington, D.C., September 7th through the 9th, called Beyond Genocide, Preserving Christianity in the Middle East. We'll spend 3 days talking about this issue, lobbying Congress, talking to American political leaders and policymakers about what needs to be done in order to protect the long-term life, longevity, integration, survival of Christianity in the Middle East, as well as combating this ideology of extreme Islam that is infiltrating throughout the world, and which I do have to say represents, the most extreme part of this ideological battle that we find ourselves in.
Kirsten, is the event from the 7th to the 9th in September in Washington, is that open to the public if they register in advance?
Absolutely. They can go to our website, indefenseofchristians.org, find out more about what we do in the local level, in their communities, cities around the country, sign up for our newsletter, get information on this topic in their inboxes once a week, twice a week, and come to the event. It's open to the public. They can register on the website. They can also register at nac2016.org.
Kirsten Evans, Executive Director of In Defense of Christians, thank you very much for joining us today on Breitbart News Daily.
Thank you very much for having us.